Okay, hi all, welcome back. We're about to do the last part of the 2006 Farm Accounts question. So the last part, it says down at the bottom here, is to prepare a general profit and loss account for the year 31st of the 12th, 2005. So this general profit and loss account is very similar to the enterprise analysis account for cattle and milk, except it's like just an account for the entire farm instead of just for one section of the farm like cattle and milk or sheep. Okay, so we treat it just like them, in which case we have an income and an expenditure. So it could also be known as sort of an income and expenditure account or a profit and loss account. Okay, because it is a profit and loss account for the year ended, we label it the same way, general profit and loss account for the year ended, as opposed to on or as at a particular date like we do for a balance sheet. So for the year ended, so I put the date up there. And then we're going to start with income over here. Now, one thing to note at the very start of this, and I'll repeat it over and over again as we go along, in a profit and loss account, you put down any income that you should be getting for that period, not necessarily what you did receive, and any expenditure that you should be paying out for that period, not necessarily what you have paid. So for instance, with the expenditure side, if you had an electricity bill of €50, for that whole period, you put in the entire 50, even if you haven't paid the bill yet. Okay, same goes with income. If there's something that you should have gotten in for that period, like for instance, some of your investment interest, if you were owed some interest from your investments that you made, some income, if you like, from those investments, if you're owed that for that year, but you haven't received it yet, you still put in the whole amount that you should have received. Okay, so just to show you what I've got over here, we've got the statement of capital, the first part of the question, and we also have over here the enterprise analysis account for cattle and milk and the enterprise analysis account, just left the account bit out there, for sheep. So they're the first two parts of the question, because we might need to refer back to some of them as we're going through this question. So, one last thing to say before we go on then. In this general profit and loss account, we don't need to put in, for instance, the expenditure that we've already included in the cattle and milk or in the sheep account, or the income that we've already included in cattle and milk or sheep. Now, we do want to include something about cattle and milk and sheep in this general profit and loss account, because this is the profit and loss account of the entire farm, and these are part of the entire farm. But instead of including all the individual parts again, all we need to include is the profit for each of them. So the profit from the cattle and milk side of the farm and the profit from the sheep side of the farm, we put them in as income. Now, it's never happened in this question before, but if there were a loss from one of these parts of the farm, then we'd put it in as expenditure, but it's usually a profit and income. So that's how we'll start. We'll go for in our first income, profit on cattle and milk. And then we're going to have two columns here again, just like we've had in other questions. And the profit, if we see from cattle and milk again, was 24,300. We just transfer it straight over into the first column on the left. So 24,300. And our next part is going to be, I'm just going to say profit on again, sheep. And again, it's going to be the last line of your enterprise analysis account for sheep, 20,300. Okay, so that's the start of it. Then, anything that we've already entered into our accounts to do with cattle and milk and sheep, we do not need to put in again into this general profit and loss account. It's been contained in these two figures, so that's it. So when we're going back to our question and we're looking for other income to put into this general profit and loss account, we ignore all sheep stuff and all cattle and milk stuff. Okay, so the next thing to do is, if we look down through the, I suppose, the income side of your income and expenditure or receipts and payments account here, we'll see that there's, if we forget about the balance for the start, that's just the money that you had. That's an asset, isn't it, as opposed to income. Milk, that's cattle and milk. Sheep, that's sheep. Cattle, lambs, that's in the sheep part. Calves, that's in the cattle part. Subsidy sheep, subsidy cattle, all of those we've taken care of before, we can ignore. Wool, that's already been in the sheep account. Forestry premium, well, that's something we haven't seen before. That's neither cattle and milk nor sheep, so we definitely have to include that here. So forestry premium. And what did we say it was? It was 2,100. 2,100. Okay. And if we keep going down here, the last thing is the interest from the investments. Well, we didn't include any of that income, that interest from investments, in the in any of the analysis accounts that we've already done. So we must put that in also. But again, like I said, it doesn't matter how much you actually received. You received 600. What goes in a profit and loss account is what you ought to have, or what you should have received. Okay, so this is general profit and loss account for a year, which ended on this date, for a year. So what should you have received in investment income for the year? I'm just going to put on investment. And you can put like interest or income, it doesn't matter. Investment interest or investment income. What should you have received? Well, quite easily from here you can tell that if 6 months interest from the bond is 600, then a year's worth of interest, what you should have received for a year, will be twice that. It'll be 1,200. So that's how much you put in here. So kind of straightforward in this particular case, 1,200. Okay, and that's all there is for the income side of this. And if we tot that up, it comes to 47,900. Okay, and we're ready to start our expenditure side. Oops, expenditure. Okay, so a bit more on the expenditure side than there is in the income side. Maybe we'll just look for the expenses first, and then we'll work out what the figures are afterwards. So if we try and identify fertilizer, well, we've already included fertilizer and veterinary fees, 60 and 40%. So 100% of those expenses have already been included in your cattle and sheep accounts. Okay, so we can ignore fertilizer. General farm expenses, well, did we have that in our cattle and sheep? Where are we? General farm expenses, we did. So we can ignore that also. Dairy wages, well, that's just to do with cattle. Sheep, cattle, light heat and fuel, we haven't included that yet. So that is something that will have to go in our general profit and loss. Light heat and fuel, isn't it? Sometimes it goes or is written down as just light and heat rather than light heat and fuel. Machinery, well, purchase of machinery, we don't actually put into a profit and loss account ever. Sure, we don't. But there is something to do with fixed assets. We don't put in the purchase of the fixed assets, but we definitely put in the depreciation on fixed assets, don't we? So we'll put that here as well. Machinery depreciation. Okay. As we go down through it, then we have repairs. Well, we never included that in either of the accounts so far, so we'll put that in here. That is an expense. Where were we? Vets fees and medicine, we already included that in the cattle and sheep accounts, so we can skip that. Bank loan plus 18 months interest. Okay, well, we don't put loans down as expenditure or income, either one. But what we do put down as expenditure is interest on loans, the interest that we pay as an expense. And we haven't included any loan interest in our sheep and cattle accounts. So we're going to put that in. Loan interest. And then after that, I don't see anything else. I think we're good to go. Let's just look at some information in the additional information here about the expenses. Wait till that focuses a bit. Come on now. Oh, sorry about this. Okay. I'm going to just pause it there and come back when I learn how to focus my camera. Okay, I wasn't able to do that in this short period of time, so just for a moment until...